And we're live. Happy November 5th, everybody. Welcome to A Nice Place to Brew. I'm Jason.
And I'm George.
And with us, of course, is Polly.
And with us is Polly.
Yes, exactly.
Nice Place to Brew. I'm Jason.
Uh-oh.
All right, somebody's got the echo going.
That'd be Polly, I think.
Okay.
With us, of course, is Polly. Yes, exactly. I'm Jason.
So,
Fix that.
Somebody's got the
Mute
yeah, Polly,
something.
Can you might need to mute him until he can get that sorted.
Yeah, good call. Well, let's at least you get past the intro. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
So, much has changed in the last week. We survived an election, and lives changed too. But we made it here. Today's November 5th. We do the webcast every Thursday here on the YouTube and Facebook channel. We broadcast at 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Our website is www.aniceplacetobrew.com. We do an audio podcast under the same name, A Nice Place to Brew. We have not done an episode in a long time, but we do have a large back catalog. So if you can't wait till next Thursday, check out our audio podcast or check out our library of past episodes here on the YouTube channel. We're on social media also under the names A Nice Place to Brew and Nice Place to Brew. Welcome, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great week. Hope everybody's got a beverage in their hands. And before we introduce beverages, I'd like to introduce tonight's guest, Mr. John Bitterman from Joliet, Illinois, making his second appearance here on A Nice Place to Brew. How are you, John?
I'm all right today.
Good. I've got background envy, man. What a great setting you've got there.
I like that.
Last time it was the cans. This time I'm down here with the glasses.
Okay. Well, that's a perfect segue because George just texted us right before the broadcast that we needed to have something to shoot to be close at hand for the broadcast here. And
Right, and that was for two reasons.
Okay. Yes.
Number one, there was a big event.
Wait,
that happened
I got
this week.
shots coming. Hold on.
He got shot. Okay, he's got shots.
You got shots coming. All right.
I don't even have a beer in my hand yet, so let me go grab one real fast.
Okay. All right.
Oh, Polly, you're just way unprepared, man. All right, we'll wait for you, man. No worries. So
Hey, I just got here. Leave me alone.
Okay, let me tell my story about this. So George, with no context, said, "Okay, guys, you need to have your shot glasses ready," which I did, and I got to tell you, I have maybe never been more embarrassed to be a homeowner than I was within the last hour when I looked and saw my shot glass collection.
do you not have one, or do you have too many?
No, it's neither. I have a very reasonable number of shot glasses, but I think I have the same shot glasses now that I had like 17 years ago. I mean, it's like, how in the hell do I excuse like hanging on to this crap? It's like, seriously, like it's something to be embarrassed about, truly. So, but that's where I'm at.
Well,
I have a feeling when the invasion comes this weekend, I think that area of the house is going to look a lot different.
It might. Looks like Polly has his shot glass, so I wanted us to have something to shoot for two reasons. Number one, big change this week. Our own Jason Sullivan went from a señorito to a senior and has gotten married. And so, cheers to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
But also, I named this this webcast Politic, schmolotics for a reason. If we devolve into any political talk, save the announcement of a clear winner, I'll let that one slide. But anything else, we have to take a shot. It's an anti-politics drinking.
Okay. So being that we don't have like electric shock pods or something like that, that's what we have as an alternative is hard alcohol.
So you can talk politics so long as you want to get shit faced.
I tell you, this is quite genius, and I very much support this idea. All right, so let's watch our asses, you guys. Let's keep this in good order. I think as a precaution, I should probably grab my bottle of wild turkey that's upstairs, and I'm going to go grab it.
Okay. So while he's doing that, John, what are you drinking tonight?
I got Moody Tongue. What? What you don't know about? I got Moody Tongue.
Moody Tongue. Who makes that?
Pilsner.
Do you know who makes that?
Moody Tongue in Chicago.
Oh, that's the Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. It's an aperitif pilsner. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how it's different from a regular pilsner, but that's what they describe it as. An aperitif pilsner.
That's a good question. I am drinking something called Wake and Shake, which is obviously a play on Wake and Bake. But it is a nice and dark, Jason, you'll appreciate this, sweet stout from a local brewery called Iron Pipe. It's only about 6.5%, so it's just this side of sessionable, and it's pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah, what do you got?
Okay, I have homemade cream ale. I'm down to my last 2 bottles of cream ale, and this is a beer I'm pretty proud of this year. So back to work.
Back to work. All right, and Paulie, last but not least, sir, what about you?
I am actually drinking the very first professional beer that I ever
Paulie
brewed.
is drinking the first professional beer that he ever brewed.
No, it's yes, from Route 66. Hold on, it's Irish red ale called the River Bay Red. I brewed it, packaged it today, and I put it on tap. It's on tap right now. It's one of their recipes, so. But it's still exciting. I followed everything through with it, and here I am drinking it now.
Man,
how'd it turn out?
It's all right.
that was awesome.
It's all right.
Yeah. Well, honestly, like another congrats. This is yet another milestone on this journey for you, Paulie. That your beer is not just in the tanks. It is now being served, and you're probably the first one to get a taste of it, and that's very appropriate. And I find it so cool that you're enjoying that here on the webcast too.
Agreed.
Yes, John. I'm sorry, I missed what.
Like I told you, Thursday night for release.
This Thursday, it's getting released. Well, today is Thursday.
No, it was released today to Mug Clubbers, general public tomorrow. So you can go down and try River Bay Red tomorrow.
Okay.
To the general public, and beer that's one of their staples that I brewed for them. So
okay.
In 2 weeks from today, there, Jason, we might have to do a special remote show because that's when the West Coast IPA that we did together.
That seems very appropriate that we would be doing a live broadcast from Route 66 Old School Brewing to commemorate the release of that beer.
I would agree. So
yeah.
John, you said it was Moody Tongue Aperitif Pilsner, right?
Yep. Moody Tongue Aperitif Pilsner.
Okay, so I looked up aperitif because that rang a bell in my head, but I couldn't remember it myself. It's an alcoholic drink taken before a meal to stimulate an appetite. So it's like an amuse-bouche of alcohol for a meal.
Well, we may do a deep dive on this, but I remember hearing that over the course of like a formal meal, there's a succession of drinks that's supposed to be followed. Yeah. You have beer as kind of like a quote-unquote appetizer. You have wine during your meal, and then you have a spirit afterwards.
Yeah, so there's the aperitif, which is before the meal, and then I didn't know this, I just found this out. There's the digestif afterwards.
Okay, is that a beer also?
Well, it's supposed to be a drink that aids in digestion.
Okay.
So the first one stimulates the appetite, and then the other one after the meal, stimulates digestion. As a progression in that.
John, does this ring some bells?
Oh yeah, I've heard that before. Like I said, my dad always drank a snifter of brandy at the end of his meal.
Yeah,
Which is one of, just one of those things that you see sometimes that they offer up at the end of the meal. So I'm supposing that something along those lines is a digestive. I think there's a couple of liquors that describe themselves that way as digestive. Cabernet, how do you say it? It's that cranberry thingy, that Cabernet, or however you say it. And there's a couple other ones. Isn't Sambuca part of that at the back end of the meal too?
It might be, yeah. Sambuca. Yeah. Herbal liqueurs, Grand Marnier, Jägermeister, limoncello is another one, and you're right. Brandy.
Okay, so limoncello, that makes a lot of sense.
And more.
The citrus fruits mixed with that.
Yeah, I agree.
So I've never thought about finishing a meal with a shot of Jägermeister, though. That's pretty bold.
Yeah, limoncello versus Jägermeister. I feel like it's two very different nights.
Exactly.
It's a wide range of alcohol there.
Yeah, exactly. Although, if someone wants to give that a try and report back to us, how does it feel to cap off a meal with a shot of Jaeger? I'm quietly curious about how that goes. Oh man!
They go good. I'll tell you that from experience. Shots of Jaeger after a meal does not go. I'll tell you that.
Does not go good. See, that's what I would expect.
All right.
That makes sense to me.
I would think one shot of Jaeger leads to another shot of Jaeger, and then pretty soon you're just going down a bad road somewhere.
I mean, that's a typical Jaeger night. That's what you would expect from that.
Oh my God. The last thing on this list of liqueurs as a digestive, I shit you not, is Malort. Which, again, is a third very different night.
Yeah, I would agree.
That should only be on a list of things to not drink.
I agree.
Yeah.
So,
oh man. All right. So, John.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, where do I even begin? You are such a wealth of knowledge, and we honestly, the last episode we did with you was such a blast, and I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I'm glad we were able to make this work.
I'm glad you had me back.
Thank you. So how have things been since obviously we're still kind of in the midst of the whole COVID nightmare, and I know your collection had still been growing, and the expo that you had at the Joliet Historical Museum had passed. How was the summer for you? What's been kind of noteworthy since then?
It's kind of empty and boring. I mean, I've been going out to a lot of breweries, but not a whole lot of advertising to pick up. A lot of them don't use coasters because they're reusable, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
A lot of them have cut back on glassware and things like that because that's just extra money they don't have to spend because they're barely staying afloat because their sales are down so dramatically.
Yeah.
Even from an Oktoberfest standpoint, there's probably only about 50-60% of the Oktoberfest this year in the Chicagoland area that they've been in the past years. And, they had to all be social distance. You could only have 50 people into your brewery for your Oktoberfest. There were 1 to 3, and then another seating from 5 to 7, and then a third one from 7 to 9. You were, not 250 people hanging out in a parking lot and inside a brewery drinking. So it's just, it hasn't been fun. It's just not the same.
Yeah, I think everybody has a version of that. You also have made a habit of going to conferences and expos where a lot of the things that you've grown to collect have been kind of on display and also for sale. Did all those get canceled this year?
Yeah, yeah.
They did.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
yeah, everything got canceled. I was going to go to 2 of them this year. One in Pittsburgh, and that was canceled, and then one in St. Louis, and that was canceled. And the other one that was going to be just outside of Pittsburgh was canceled as well. You can't get you can't get 200, 300 collectors together in a hotel, walking from room to room and drinking and buying and selling their stuff, and then setting up on a trade floor. And then the public comes in and buys. You can't regulate that. I mean, how do you keep everybody 6 feet apart? And the other part is a lot of the people in the hobby they tend to tip the scales a little up on the higher end. So there was a lot of apprehension for those people as well. I mean, you're 60, 65. You don't want to go to one of those shows and risk getting sick and dying. So
Sure.
we sent, I'm on the board of one of the clubs, and we sent out a survey back in March. Our national show was going to be in August, and the response was overwhelming that people back even in March and May didn't feel comfortable going to the show. And if it hadn't been, we were looking at 300 people coming. And ultimately, most of those 300, all but 85 of the 300 said they simply would not go because of the situation.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't run a show on that way. You've got guaranteed rooms for the hotels. You're telling the hotel you're going to have 500 room nights over a week, and all of a sudden you're down to 150 rooms. The hotel's going to start charging you extra money for those rooms, and you don't have. So it becomes financially prohibitive to do it, and all canceled, and all rescheduled for next year. And knock on wood, you don't know what's going to happen between now and then.
I know.
Yeah. Even the museum. There was no tasting at the museum. There'd have been 2 tastings at the museum this year. The museum's barely open. I don't even know if they're open right now, if they've had to close back down again. My class at JUCO at the junior college was canceled. It just everywhere. It was not just. I still got out there, visited a lot of breweries when they, once the state reopened, and had a lot of good beer, but just not the same.
Yeah. No, and that's very well said. I think everybody has a different version of that. One thing that comes to mind is Homebrew Con. Went through that same cycle, went through that same analysis, and they came up and just said there's just no safe way we can do this. So they just got canceled along with everything else. So we've just, we've collectively have just had to weather the storm, throughout all this. And I like you, I have visited a fair number of breweries over the summer, and I feel fortunate that we've, found a safe enough way to do that. And there's still a handful of breweries in here in the greater Chicagoland area that opened up over the last year. In a little bit greater time frame. This doesn't overlap into 2020, but even Paulie's Brewery, Route 66 Old School Brewing, just opened last summer, so they're kind of on the outskirts of this as well. Yeah. But I'm trying to think. Let's even talk about this. Like, I have one brewery in particular that was new this year that I visited for the first time that really just kind of blew me away and just said, wow, this is the start of something big. John, does anything like that come to mind as far as to what you've visited for the first time this year?
2 of the recent ones that have opened stood out in my mind. Art History and Goldfinger.
Okay, Goldfinger was the one I was about to bring up. We can do a deep dive on this, but can you tell me about Art History? Because I've not heard of that one.
Art History is up in Geneva, Batavia. I can't actually remember what town it is directly. On the Fox Valley, right off of 38. So yeah, it's Geneva, just a couple blocks from Penrose and Stockholm. Making a lot of lagers and doing a really good job. But the beer for me that they make that stands out is they make a Rauch beer.
Oh.
You have Dovetail, and you have them, and you have Metropolitan, and that is it for Rauch beer.
Yeah.
In the Chicagoland area. Dovetail's on the market, and probably you have another one I'm missing. I all the time issued one.
Have you had the Rauch beer from Emancipation?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah. But that's just that's just a one-off for him. That's not an all-the-time beer. Every day of the year, Metropolitan has their Rauch beer out, and Dovetail has their Rauch beer, and They are selling their Rauch beer like crazy up there, up at Art History, and it is an excellent one.
Wow.
Yeah, it's worth.
They're selling the crap out of a Rauch beer. I mean, that's a specialty flavor right there, because I mean that's not a beer for the masses.
No, and like I said, what I loved about it was just the right amount of smoke. Like I said, I'm not a what's that? The one out of Germany, the big German one. Help me, anybody.
Gosh,
I don't know. Can't help you with
man.
that.
I'm not sure.
It's got that yellowish label that looks like an old scroll of paper. I can't remember, but that one is over smoky to me. But the others, Dovetail, the Metropolitan, and them, all three of them have just the right balance, I think, on the smoke. You can get too much smoke in those sometimes, and
You certainly can. I've tried more than my share that have just overdone it, and that's a delicate beer. It's challenging to get that right balance, and if you do, just appreciate it and enjoy it. George and I really found it on one porter recipe that we made like 5 years ago, and I've made smoked beers since then, but I have not nailed that ratio.
Jason, I think I found what he's talking about.
Okay.
If you want to share my screen there.
There it is.
yep, that's it. Yeah, that's
Rubach.
it's an excellent beer, but
Rubach,
it's an excellent beer, but it's just a little too smoky. But it is the standard. It's the standard beer for Rauch beers. That one is generally. But it's just a little too smoky for me.
What a great looking label! Wow.
It is a great looking label, isn't it? Yeah, I like that. Yeah. So yeah, Jason and I, when we did that, we actually took a portion of our base malt and I smoked that in my smoker over, I think it was apple wood, and so I cold smoked it basically. Soaked it in some distilled water and then cold smoked it and dried it, and then we just ground it up and mashed it like normal, and it turned out really well.
Well, wasn't the really good one? Didn't we use your charcoal grill for that one?
That's true. We did it twice.
Right.
The first time was before I got my smoker, and it was on a Weber grill.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
just smoked it that way. And then the second time was with a slightly better smoker. So, yeah.
I had a friend of ours, Bill, that was on the show a couple months ago. He did a Rauch beer, but I forgot what the grain was. It was a smoke grain. 100%. That was his base malt. It was
100%?
way over smoky. Yeah,
Oh, geez.
I felt like I was kissing Grandma from The Simpsons. I mean, I felt like I was licking an ashtray as I'm drinking this beer.
Yeah, that's
It's kind of a
much.
little disgusting.
That's the impression you get from something. It's like you're really right on top of the fire, or you shoved your face in a charcoal grill, right into a grill.
Right.
They can be overpowering. It's hard to find that, But Art History did a great job with it, and the rest of their beers are really good too. They've had a pale ale and a lager on. In general, they've done an excellent job up there. They're worth checking out if you've not been up there.
So, can you say anything about the non-beer portion of it? I assume Art History is speaking to a theme that they have going on.
Yeah. The signs in there are kind of Art Deco designed. It's got a very Art Deco design to everything that they do, including the glasses and their logo and everything else. It's got a very Art Deco thing going on, and I think that's where it comes from. They told me the whole story. I want to say the owner's daughters, or one of the owner's daughters, studied art and art history, and she's the one who came. That's how they came up with the name, because she was studying art and art history, and she liked Art Deco, and I think she's done most of the designs for them, for all the different signs for the different beers and the glassware and everything else. I said it's only a couple blocks away from Penrose and Stockholm, so it's a good location.
Nice.
Jason, I would love to try that if you want to snow globe me some of that.
I'm sure I can make that happen for you, sir.
There you go. All right.
Yep. Okay,
So
let's talk about Goldfinger.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, John, I'm so glad we can talk about this. I have reached out to the owner of Goldfinger and tried to get them on. One, because they previously were working with a brewery that I have frequented for a long time because they host a monthly homebrewers night, but also because like what they have going, I think is really special. Number one, their sole focus on German style lagers, and the fact that they've perfected it just to the extent that they have is just so impressive to me. Do you agree with those?
Oh, absolutely. The slow pour on the Czech is incredible. Every beer is just incredibly good and spot on. The problem is they keep running out.
Yeah, exactly.
They admitted that they did not think they were going to sell the amount of beer that they have. They started with 3 beers, then they had an Australian lager, and then the Pilsner ran out, and they're holding those beers for 6 weeks. So it's not like, when Pilsner runs out, they're sitting there going, okay, we're down to 3 beers again. Then as soon as they got the Pilsner back on, the Australian lager was gone. Then they got the Oktoberfest on, but the Vienna ran out. I don't think they've ever had more than 4 on at one time because they just don't. And if you go in there, they don't have the space to add a whole lot more tanks.
No, that's true. That's true. They don't.
Do not have a lot of space in there to add more tanks, which is a shame because they could add a shit ton more tanks and they would still be selling out beer the way they are.
Yeah.
No, they are killing.
And they're doing decoction methods too.
Oh yeah. Well,
No, this you definitely need to get them on because I want to talk to them about how they're doing that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and also, like, we'll cap it off with this. Not only the decoction, but they're also doing natural carbonation. So we talked at length in episodes past about using spunding methods and using a beer's fermentation pressure to carbonate beers. They're taking that to the commercial level, which I think is really, really cool, and one I'd love to know more about too. So I guess I'm putting this out into the universe that I want to have a conversation with Goldfinger on this webcast. So
have you talked to them directly, Tom?
I've met Tom in other settings before. He was the brewer at a different brewery in Downers Grove before Goldfinger got started, and that was the place that held a monthly homebrewers night. And he had been known to join in the discussion and offer just some commentary on some products that we would bring in as homebrewers. And he's really, really knowledgeable and had a lot to share with the group. But it's been a long time since I've interacted with him. But that's the extent of it.
Maybe we'll have to take a trip up there one day. Every time I go up there, I hang out and visit with Tom. He was generous enough to provide me with glasses for the collection, gratis, and he's always fun to talk with. So now,
good.
We'll go up there. We'll get some beer to send out east a little bit, and we'll visit with Tom.
Snow globes. Yeah, I live right down the road from there, so we can do that anytime. Open invite.
Speaking of glasses, John, I have to ask, what room are you in your house?
I'm in. It was the master bedroom. Now it's no longer. Now it's just a room of glasses. This is properly the Chicago room. All the glasses in this room are from the city of Chicago, and the 2 closets are filled with all of my Oktoberfest half-liter, 1-liter, and dimpled mugs, and the other closet is filled with all my rock bottom glasses from Illinois.
Okay.
You can see here, just glasses everywhere.
Wow.
There's a.
Oh, he's freezing up.
Yeah. See, it's just cabinet after cabinet of glasses.
I feel bad that I'm the only one out of the 3 of us that have walked through John Vitterman's house.
Backwards.
If you want to walk through a living museum, you go to his house.
Yeah.
See a million things. Speaking of, now I was saying that, John, I know I told you earlier, pull out this hydrometer I asked you about. Do you have that with you?
Yeah, I got.
You will love this. John, tell them the details of this.
I got a pair of right there. This I have two old brewing instruments that came from supposedly they were given to me a long time ago. Supposedly they had come from the brewer they were used at the brewery in Joliet.
Okay.
They're both glass, marked made in Germany. So not West Germany, not East Germany, but Germany, which clearly predates the war. And,
Right.
I'm sure that's mercury down there. If
Oh yeah,
you're
that's
not
mercury.
wrong.
yeah, and they're marked in German words and everything. So I have firm belief that these probably were original old school pieces
That's
that were
very
used by the
cool.
brewers in Joliet in the years before Prohibition that were given to me.
Wow.
And
So
now
is
they
that
just
your? And you'll have to forgive me. I missed the last episode. Is that your like your historical specialization? Is like the Prohibition era?
no
or-
Joliet
Okay.
is my main specialty, and like I said, these supposedly came from a brewery in Joliet, and then the rest of the state of Illinois I could espouse on any brewery in its entire history for a solid period of time that would put you all to sleep.
Oh, I don't know about that, but yeah. All right. Okay.
No, actually, the one day John came down to visit me when I was brewing, like there was a brewery in the town that I work in, and there's a mural. Jason's seen it. There's a mural on the back wall of my brew house, and
Sure have.
and that's actually the brewery that was in the town. And John and the owner are talking about. Oh, John's like, oh yeah, this house, this brewery, this part of the building burned down. They took the second floor off of this, and it's still standing in Wilmington. I'm gonna find it. I might have to have John come down and meet me one day after work.
I know right where it's at. I can drive you right over there anytime you want.
All right. Well, we'll make.
Right on
we'll make
Kankakee. It's on Kankakee River Road. It's every time I go down to Wilmington, I get off and I go down Kankakee River Road just to make sure it's still there.
Oh, it's on Kankakee Road. Is it the one that comes on the west side of the pheasant farm?
It's I don't know. I just know where it's at. I have nothing else that's in the air. I don't pay attention to anything else in the air except that one building when I drive back. Oh, there.
All right. Well, we'll find it. You can show me, and I know because I've been talking to all the regulars, and I can find the back ways. Like if I want to go up 55, I can figure out. I know a way to go through town, come up, take a couple turns left and right, and then next thing you know, I'm on 55, right when it's merging for the construction going over one of the rivers.
Yeah, no, that's all the time on 55 construction.
I know.
Okay, so John, what brought? I know the short answer is people like to drink, but what was the catalyst for bringing breweries to Joliet? Was there a family that did it, or was there
Actually, the first immigrants in Joliet were Germans, 1836.
Okay, that'll do it. Yeah.
That pretty much did it.
Yeah.
It was the same thing in a lot of small towns. You couldn't be sure that the water flowing down the Des Plaines River through Joliet was clean or safe.
Right.
There was a spring about a block off of that, and that's where he built a brewery. Right on Spring Street, down right by the river, there was a naturally occurring spring. And anytime you get Germans in town, you got to get somebody making beer.
Yeah, you'd think, right? And
you're talking like I said, you're 1836, 1837. The Black Hawk War had just really basically ended and cleared out. Chicago didn't have but more than 100 people in it, and all of a sudden you got like 50, 60 people showing up in Joliet and settling down. There was only one brewery in Chicago. They sure as hell were not sending beer here, and there was no other breweries at all in the area. So it's always breweries were generally among the first industries in a lot of towns, if there wasn't already one within a close proximity.
So and it's amazing to me because a lot of the origins of breweries are around water potability, and if it's not boiled, you need to find a way to make it drinkable, and infusing some alcohol into it tends to be an easy way to do that. But you don't think about. I think about that a lot when I think about like old European breweries, but not so much breweries that were originally founded in the U.S. It's amazing to think that, even here we have situations where they weren't 100% sure about the water, and the solution was beer. You don't think about that very often.
No, but yeah, no, we had the same situation and issues here as they did in Europe when Europe expanded. That was, during the 1000, 11, 12, 1300s. You get over here this 16, 17, 1800s as the country expanded, you encountered the same problems here as they did in Europe.
For sure, yeah.
Water was not always guaranteed to be safe, and you boiling it when you make beer certainly guarantees that it's consumable.
Yeah, so and I know a lot of those early breweries and things, it wasn't so much like the styles that we know today. A lot of it was more of like a table beer, a lower alcohol beer. Is that the same situation with the early Joliet breweries?
Lower alcohol, yeah, they were generally pilsners. So you're
okay.
still, but they really weren't pilsners because you're 1830s. So you don't have lager yeast, but they were weak versions of porters, weak versions of English ales. The Porter made, which is the funny thing about it, Porter made a London Porter. Edwin Porter made a London Porter beer for a long time. I just got a label last week for a champagne beer, which I would imagine.
Champagne beer.
Yeah. I don't. Give me a second. I'll pull the label out because I just got
Miller High Life.
No.
No, not decidedly not, Jason.
Jason. Sorry.
I know. That's why I brought that up.
Hey, there you go. Hey, get there, right there. Can you see that label right there?
Yeah, the barrel one.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
That's nice.
Okay.
A champagne pale ale.
Okay.
I don't.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not quite sure what that would have been from a stylistic standpoint. An extra effervescent pale ale, or what they were doing with that one.
I'm wondering if it would be similar to like a Australian sparkling, where that is, an extra effervescent type beer. I wonder if it'd be similar to that. So
I got it. This is the original goddamn fucking brewed ale. That's all I'm gonna say. No,
okay.
brewed ale because it was always dry. You're like champagne
brewed.
dry.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what he said, Brute. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Paulie, I thought you said brewed ale. I was like,
Oh.
brewed ales, man.
No, brewed. Yeah, because I remember, what was it, a couple years ago when Brutes were like the new thing, and like right after Hayes came out, Brutes came out, and like, oh, this could be the new one, and I'm glad they died. I really am, because
boy,
I was really happy about, but I get it. Yeah. So, John, do you know? Did they import a lot of like the open cask fermentation in the Joliet area, or was it? Do you know if it was more closed?
Closed.
Closed. Okay.
Yeah. Closed. Yeah. Okay. I found no indication of any open cask fermentation. All the pictures I've seen from the inside of the breweries and things of that nature, they're all closed.
Okay. Yeah, because the open cask fermentation seems really dangerous to me, but it, apparently it added some particular character from the yeast that would collect in the rafters and things like that to the beer.
You tend to see that more with the old East Coast brewers. I think Ballantine did that for a while, and some of the others, because they were more Englishy in nature. The settlers,
makes sense, yeah.
The settlers in that area was the Midwest settlers were German and were more Central European, German, Czech, and the rest of those. So that was not something that would have appealed to them. They wanted that clean, crisp lager, which is what really took off, in the 1870s.
But those original, sorry, Jason, those original. You're right. I'm geeking out. Those original.
Please do.
Fermenters, though, they were wood construction, right?
Oh yeah. And actually, what I want to say all the way up into the 80s, I think Dubuque Brewing Company and Schell's and Minhas, Huber at the time, were still had some wood constructed fermenters and tanks that they were using. All the way up into the 80s, I think, before they finally replaced out the last couple with and I think Latrobe too, over there by you, was using those glass-lined wood tanks for a long, long time.
Right.
I think all the way up until probably the mid 70s for sure, you could still find some of those wood ones in a few of the old school breweries in the country.
Huh. All right. Yeah. So Jason, sorry, go ahead.
So let's swing this around to homebrew, because I think that the concept of open cask fermentation is probably going to be new to a lot of listeners out there. Can we go into context about what that kind of is from a historical standpoint? Why some breweries chose that over others?
You want to take it?
It was mainly the Belgians that did that more than anybody else. You find that in the northern Central European area, the Belgians, the Dutch, even up into Finland with the Satis and some of those others, you find that more. It was merely just a matter of you mostly found it because they didn't know what the hell yeast was. They just knew that something came in and landed in this, and then it started bubbling away, and then pretty soon you had something that tasted good. So they literally would open the louvers and the windows in their brewery and just let the natural flora and fauna and whatever was floating in the air come in and settle down, and it would ferment. But it also gave it that funkiness that so many people are familiar with, especially with the Belgians.
Right. A lot of the Belgian yeast and the esters that we get from now the commercially available Belgian yeast were more or less accidental originally. The open cask fermenters, you'll see them a lot even used today in like whiskey and bourbon and things like that. They'll use an open cask fermenter because but they'll use commercial yeast, but the alcohol content is so high that they're not really worried about infection or or wild yeast or anything like that. But a lot of the original Belgian, especially, you're right, and some of the German styles were essentially originally wild yeasts that collected in that. And yeah, you open up the windows, something came in magical, and all of a sudden you had beer. Eventually, because of all of that kind of effervescing and fermenting and into the rafters themselves, it developed its own strain. And as you had that open, the yeast that was in the rafters would come down from moisture and everything from these open casks would develop on the rafters. The moisture would develop and then drip down in, and that's how you would get your yeast in there. And that's how you eventually got repeatability. Yeah. But it was very much almost pseudo accidental in its development, which is why a big reason why the Belgian strains are so character forward, why you get a lot of those esters that you don't get with like the German ones that John's talking about. But it is very much a development because of those open casks.
Wow.
If you go to some of those old breweries, those old small town breweries in Belgium, they're just cobweb filled and dust filled and everything else because they don't want to tamper with that, because we might mess up our 300 or 400 or 500 years of good beer making by cleaning the wrong place in our brewery. So we're just going to leave all those cobwebs and dust laying around because it's working, and it's worked for the better part of half a millennium.
Imagine cleaning your rafters and all of a sudden you don't have the same beer anymore. You know, it's
that's so crazy.
Dovetail in Chicago uses a cool ship. They oddly enough, they do allow a certain amount, I think, of natural yeast to come in, but they maintain it and they watch it way better than what they do in Belgium or ever did. But there are a few breweries in the United States that have cool ships, which is nothing more than just a deep pan that they throw all the beer in and just let it flow out into this large deep pan and just wait and see what happens next. Dovetail has some really good sours and crikes and things along those lines that you don't think about Dovetail on that. Everybody thinks about Dovetail for their lagers and everything else along those lines. but they've made some excellent sours and other Belgium and Crikes and other things along those lines that a lot of people, they don't pay attention to them, and they're really good up there if you get them.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it if you've got patience, because if you use those cool ship styles, a lot of times you can get some really good wild yeast and everything, but it takes a while for that to mellow out. So you almost have to lager those sours and let everything kind of come to, and mellow out, so you're not getting, just hit you in your face sour infection flavor.
See, that makes
over time.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me that you would go from like that type of setting to a lager just to kind of mellow out those sour flavors. But is that the de facto technique for those types of beers, Paulie? You may best know that.
So I was looking at my phone. What am I talking about here?
Oh, okay, all right. We're talking about sours, more specifically cool ship fermentations. And George was saying that a common technique is to lager those beers,
Sorry,
which
I
I
should
have
have said condition, not lager, but
Oh,
put it
okay.
now it's a condition, not lager.
Okay, all right. That changes.
Yeah, what I know from cool ships, I mean, I'm just learning this now. I know of 2 places that have done it around the Joliet-esque area. And so, yeah, that's like when you get the wild yeast. But yeah, conditioning, I don't know about that. I've been kegging my whole life. I can count on one hand the amount of times I've well conditioned beers.
For conditioning purposes, I'm not positive on this, but I think for conditioning purposes, they often move them into white oak barrels.
A lot of them are barrel aged. That is true. Yes.
But a lot of the time it's just white oak barrels, which don't impart any taste at all. It's the cleanest of the wood, I guess, for a barrel is a white oak. Right now, the only white oak supplier I think is down in Missouri for the United States, and a lot of fooders are made out of that initially because of that. But because white oak doesn't impart anything, but it's a very breathable beer, it allows those things to seep into the barrels that help mellow it out more or less. Not necessarily de-sour it, but bringing it down to a more palatable sour level.
Yeah.
I could be completely wrong on that, but I know that a lot of that conditioning occurs in barrels or other non-taste imparting vessels.
So, and to bring it around to homebrewers again, apparently, so a cool ship, like we talked about, is an open fermenter, but a lot of times it's not a tall, skinny one. A lot of times it's a broad, deep, but still somewhat shallow one. It's a broad one to be able to collect a bunch of yeast and everything. Apparently, it is an Americanization of a Dutch Flemish word that is like Koelschip. And it just learned that myself. And I also just learned that Allagash Brewing apparently trademarked Cool Ship at one point. But
I can't believe that was an issued trademark. I can't see how.
I mean, some of these issued trademarks really surprised me, but apparently they terminated the trademark in the interest of maintaining good relations with other craft brewers. So they're good on them. But yeah, I just thought that was funny. But in case, I
got a funny story. If we're gonna go down a foxhole here, but like people standing out. No, I'm gonna leave it alone. I was gonna talk to somebody, but I can't do it right now. So we can talk offline. But now here I am trying to make my fucking mark, and I can't say what I was gonna say. I'll tell you guys offline. But it's just I just hear too much shit. If that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Well, so. Yeah, that's really interesting, John. So Germans brought the brewing over and everything. So do you know? Obviously, they didn't have the distribution and stuff, and I know a lot. The Chicagoland area is not the best area for things like hops and certain types of grains and everything. Do you know what they did for ingredients in that time?
Oddly enough, the Galena area of Illinois was a hop growing area.
Oh, okay.
Which is the northwest corner of the state. It's a little bit south of that.
Wow.
It's a little bit south of that parallel that the Saz region all the way across through Oregon. It's that entire line is lies on one parallel across the entire world. Check all the way over.
parallel.
Thank you. But there was
Right.
there was the northwest corner of the state up by Galena did have a large hop growing region. So did parts of Wisconsin at one time, and there was barley grown in the area. Barley was grown in the area, and I've seen ads in the newspaper from E. Porter Brewing Company advertising for barley. Wanted the best quality barley for E. Porter Brewing Company Joliet. So while there was not a lot, you do see ads from the brewers looking for that. But I'd never seen an ad where a brewer was looking for hops. But being that we were on the I&M Canal, not that far from Mississippi or the Great Lakes shipping region, getting hops from upstate New York wouldn't have been a problem. You just send it down the Erie Canal, down the Erie Canal and right through the Great Lakes, and you drop it off in Chicago, and then you send it out from there. So it wasn't like we were, in the middle of Iowa or the middle of Nebraska where there was no way to really get hops easily. Hops could be shipped from the upstate New York, which was a huge hop growing region until hop blight hit them, and everything shifted west.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
That does paint really a very interesting picture of just the trade capabilities of that time.
It does,
Like it really benefited Joliet just because of their proximity to the I&M Canal.
Joliet, exists because of where it was at on the canal, and Chicago exists because of the canal as well. There would have been no way to get from Chicago to the Mississippi if there hadn't been the I&M Canal and then later the Sanitary and Ship Canal.
Right.
And then of course railroads came along. It was an entirely different story. But up until the 1860s, 1870s, all the growth in this area was because we were on the waterways.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even at Peoria. Peoria, a lot of people don't really think Peoria was one of the largest whiskey producing cities in the nation at one time. Why? Middle of the Corn Belt on the Illinois River.
Huh.
Barrels come in, and then you send it back out. So
wow. What was it? Okay. Do you know what were the big distilleries that made that out of Peoria?
American was in Peoria. Hiram Walker.
Are they still around?
I don't think American Distilling is. I think they got caught up or merged or folded into somebody. They were small. They weren't really large distilleries when you think of Jack Daniels and Jim Beam and things like that. They were
right.
smaller distilleries that were still producing a sizable amount of whiskey. It was probably rot gut type of whiskey for all I know.
Isn't it all?
Yeah.
But
that's so interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah, Peoria, and you still have a huge grain processing down there with ADM and Archer Daniel Midland,
Right.
And Cargill.
Still one of the largest companies in the state. Close to it.
Yeah.
Still one of the largest companies in the state. Yeah.
Yeah. You still have huge grain processing facilities down there. I remember being and going to Bradley down there, and you could smell it because it would waft from down by the river, which is where they were all located. It would waft its way up to the top of the hill where the university was, and I'd walk out in the morning and go, "Oh my God, that's a beautiful smell!" And everybody's like, "That smells like crap." I go, "Oh no, they're down there. They're down there mashing up some corn for somebody."
So I'm going to share this with Jason. This might be my favorite. This might be my favorite website ever created. So it is officially 2 pages. This is a brewery in Peoria. Distillery in Peoria, and I was trying to see if they had when they were founded or anything. But this is the first one. It just says they're the 2 major ones they have. They have a rye whiskey and a bourbon whiskey, and then a contact us page with who they are, and that's it. This might be my favorite website on the internet.
Here's our products. Here's where we are, and that's it. Or here's who we are.
And the contact us page is literally new page. Oh, you can't see that, but is jkwilliamsdistilling.com/new page. Like, they put no effort into this whatsoever, and I love it, and I want to go and try it.
So, George, since you're willing to travel, you gotta come to Illinois. There's a lot of good things going on up here.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I'll tell you, for an undeveloped website, that's a pretty professional looking bottle they have, and the label.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they spent all their money on that and not on a website.
Right. Come on, people.
They blew their marketing budget on the label.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man.
Oh man. Anyway.
All right.
Oh, I'm getting down on this bottle here.
So, John, what is Joliet like one of the first towns for brewing in Illinois, or like, do you know the oldest brewery in Illinois?
Yeah, the oldest brewery in Illinois was in Kaskaskia. It was in a French fort down out in Kaskaskia, which is right outside of St. Louis. I want to say sometime in the mid 1600s.
Okay, it's not still operating though?
No,
right?
no. And it simply existed because it was on the river. It was right outside of St. Louis, which, where the confluence of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers are. So it was an important trading spot, and it was a French fort that had one. And once it disappeared, you had to go all the way up to early 1800s before you started finding breweries otherwise. So we went from mid-16 to 1800s. We went a 200-year period without really anybody. The earliest ones were downstate, Bluff City, Alton, down in that area, Cairo, and then you started getting them popped up in the Chicago area, and then across as the state got settled, Kankakee, Rockford, Galena, Quad Cities. In that time period between 1800 and 1840, we went from practically nothing to probably about 30 or 40, but it was one per city and then like half a dozen in Chicago. So
And at one per city, they were pretty much just serving the local populations that were close by, right?
Yeah. I mean, and like I said, you had cities that you would think would have had one at that point in time that didn't, and it was either because the population wasn't right or demanded, or the record's been lost. You have to remember.
Yeah. That's true.
As I've said for a long time, before 1863, you didn't have to be licensed, so you didn't have to pay taxes.
Right.
Yeah.
They passed the license and tax for beer to fund the Civil War. So before that, any record just happens to be happenstance.
Okay. I did not know that.
There's no federal record. Once you hit that point in time going forward, it's real easy to know what a brewery did, where they were at, what years they existed, who the officers were, how much they produced, because that's all part of the federal record for tax purposes. But before that, it's stumbling on things in newspapers or old history books where they talked about the early years of settling areas that you find out about breweries.
We're getting dangerously close to politics here if we're talking about taxes. I'm just pointing it out.
Hey,
remember the rule. Shot glasses already. Okay. All right. I think that's a really interesting point. I do want to dive into that. What was the link between alcohol taxes and the Civil War? Can you delve a little further into that?
It was to fund it. It was to fund the Civil War. That's basically what it was. The federal government was like, we need some more money here if we're going to keep fighting these people down on the other end of the country that are against us. Let's tax booze. And it wasn't the first time. Remember there was the Whiskey Rebellion, which was out in western Pennsylvania. Was when they were taxed. Yeah, I mean, you're back in the 1750s, 60s for the Whiskey Rebellion. I think when they were taxing whiskey out there, and again, that was part of the funding for the French and Indian War or some other war in that time period. So it's not unusual for them to go after the alcohol industry when they need money to fund wars, apparently, because the Whiskey Rebellion created that problem. You also had so it was mostly just to raise money for the Civil War.
So George is originally from Pennsylvania. Can you add some context to that Whiskey Rebellion?
So it's kind of like what John was saying is they needed to raise money for the French and Indian War, and they decided to tax whiskey. People took exception to that, as they do, and it ended up with a rebellion that I think ended. That ended fairly violently, didn't it, John?
Yeah. It did. Yeah, they had to.
Yeah,
I think they had to withdraw troops from fighting in the French and Indian War and send them out to Western Pennsylvania to calm those people down.
to quell the
Ooh.
yeah, 'cause
The uprising. Yeah, the uprising.
real upset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a question for John about the Joliet breweries. I was wondering, did any of them win awards? Like, did any of them make a really good beer?
I have not seen any record where any of them won awards, but I also not seen any record where any of them entered competition.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I do have a question related to competition and Illinois, because one thing that's always bothered me is Pabst Blue Ribbon is called Pabst Blue Ribbon because they won the Blue Ribbon at the World's Fair in
1893.
1893. So did Germany not show up? Like, what the hell happened?
That is an excellent question.
We're back into politics.
Yeah. We can't go down this one. This is a politics one.
That's international relations. So there's a separation with politics.
Yeah. Do you have any insight into that? Because I really, honestly, like, it's the World's Fair, and Pabst Blue Ribbon of all things winning the Blue Ribbon there just boggles my mind.
Actually, you would have to. I'm gonna tell you, go Google it one time because it wasn't as simple as Pabst winning the Blue Ribbon.
Okay.
There were suits, there were bribings of the judges, and all sorts of other things because there was a difference in the points between Budweiser and Pabst. And they butted heads for months and months afterwards before it was actually awarded over minor technical things concerning, I can't even remember, but it's worth looking up and reading because it's a very interesting story on how they ended up actually winning that award at the end. I can't tell you who all was entered in that competition. Maybe nobody else entered. I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen a list of the entrants. But I do know that there was an intense battle when that award was given out between Anheuser-Busch and Pabst over who should have got it, who didn't get it, why this was judged this way, something to do with beers and when they were entered and brewed and descriptions and
John.
all sorts of stuff.
Jason and I just decided in the private chat here, you are going to join us on an audio assuming you're cool with it, but I'm hoping you are. You're going to join us on an audio podcast, and we're going to flesh out this whole 1890 whatever World's Fair situation. And that's going to be our topic.
Yeah, start to finish.
Start to finish, because this sounds so much more interesting than I thought it was.
See, at work we have a term for this. It's called voluntold.
Oh, yeah.
All right,
John, you've been voluntold that we're going to have a podcast and go through this Blue Ribbon thing, start to finish. Honestly, I think it's brilliant. I think this could be an absolutely fantastic podcast.
Yeah. I'm totally down.
Oh, that'd be great. I'm behind that 100%. I'll listen to it. I might sit out in the corner and listen to you guys talk.
Oh man.
So to go back to a fact that we talked about at length on the last podcast, but I find it so interesting that I feel like it's worth rehashing. Joliet went from being quite an epicenter of like brewing activity and beer consumption to nothing for almost 80 years. And obviously Prohibition was kind of the was what brought on that change. But I mean, isn't it odd, John, that it took Joliet, that long to kind of come back to the brewing scene?
Joliet is a shot in a beer town. And when the shot in the beer beers came along, Anheuser-Busch, Pabst, Blatz, Schlitz, Old Milwaukee. Joliet had a hard time turning away from those beers. You still, I mean, look, you had the Firehouse Brewing Company in Morris. Mike Rabinski down there was making some really good beers for a while, but it was Morris, Illinois. It's a shot in a beer town. You still, the two brothers struggle in Aurora, still to this day. Elgin had a brewery in the microbrewery age, folded after 5 years. There is a problem with Chicago itself not even having its own brewery for the longest period of time. You got to remember, Chicago opened up after Prohibition with some 60-odd breweries, and in a period of basically 30 years, dwindled itself down to one.
Wow.
Okay, I did not know that. Okay, so let's map this out. So Prohibition ends, 60 breweries either open or reopen, and then it consolidates down to one. In how much time?
It doesn't consolidate down to one. Chicago was never a big brewing center. You had Sipes, which sent beer out.
Okay.
You had Edelweiss, which sent beer out. But other than that, most of the pre-Prohibition breweries in Chicago were not distributing breweries.
So is that partially?
They were neighborhood breweries.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You had Peter Hand, who was serving the Prussians. You had White Stone that was serving the Polacks, the Polish people. You had Tossetti. He was mainly serving the Italian community. Chicago was a city of neighborhoods, and every neighborhood had a brewery. Meanwhile, you had Anheuser-Busch just to the south, and you had
Miller
and Pabst and Miller and Schlitz up to the north.
Yeah.
And eventually Chicago came to be the center of what was the Golden Triangle, which was an area, and we're going to draw it out a little bit, actually Heilman up in La Crosse, all the way over to Stroh's, down to St. Louis, and back up. And you had one city in the middle that didn't have a large brewery. Meisterbrau, Peter Hand, grew to, I want to say 3 million barrels maybe. But then made some horrendous investments in the mid-'60s that pushed them into bankruptcy. And once they started driving down, they were the last. Went from 3 million barrels to probably 100,000 barrels in a period of about 3 years. Not sure how they lost all that sales so dramatically and folded into bankruptcy. And then you had a void in the city of Chicago. And those cities, Miller, Milwaukee, La Crosse, Anheuser-Busch, and Stroh's flooded in to try to gain the market share. When they battled it long and hard with buying handles and deep discounts and everything else like that. And so anybody that wanted to think about having a brewery or starting one in Chicago, even in the early craft brew years, was making a horrible mistake because they couldn't get the tap handles. You had to get them to come to your place, which is what took so long, because Chicago had become so centric to those beers,
right?
But it wasn't just Chicago. I mean, the whole nation was that way. You slowly saw all the breweries disappear, but there were still pockets with old school breweries. You had Shell's, which somehow survived in New Ulm, Minnesota, despite being so close to Minneapolis and St. Paul, where you had Ham's, which was a huge brewery at one time. Rolling Rock survived incredibly well over in Latrobe, despite being really relatively close to the Christian Schmidt Brewing Company in Philadelphia, not that far from Cranston, where Falstaff and Narragansett was, and really not that far from Iron City. So you did have breweries that managed to survive, but the problem was with the Joliet breweries, we were too close to Chicago. So if you wanted to expand your market, you don't dare send your beer to Chicago, because there's 60 breweries in Chicago, one in every damn neighborhood. Right. Where are you going to sell your beer at? Because you're going to have to invade it. So which way do you go? You go south, and everything in the state, oddly enough, flows south. You are more likely to find Joliet brewery advertising in Wilmington and Braidwood and down toward Pontiac than you are in Lamont or Naperville, because the breweries and that label I showed you earlier was one of the most astounding finds I ever had. 2 years ago, I was contacted by somebody who had found a bottle for that bottler, Stuver, in Chicago, and during the research, he found an ad that said that man bottled beer from Porter's. I'm like, no way in hell. Porter's is not going to send their beer to Chicago at any point in time. That's a ridiculously insane idea. I started researching it, and sure enough, From about 1872 to about 1885, Porter sent beer to Chicago to be bottled by that bottler whose label I showed you earlier.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, that does make a little bit of sense because the fire in 1871 destroyed all but one brewery in the city, which is what gave Schlitz a huge
Chicago fire.
opportunity to come in and flood in, because Schlitz just flooded the Chicago market at the end of the fire, which is why Schlitz is the beer that made Milwaukee famous. That's why that logo is what it is, because they made Milwaukee famous by flooding Chicago with beer. But it also gave the other breweries on the outskirts, Kankakee, us, Aurora, a chance to get into Chicago. But once the Chicago market rose up again, they all withdrew back, realizing they couldn't compete in that market with all those small neighborhood breweries. Prohibition ends, and you have that same situation. The breweries in Chicago were better capitalized. They had survived better because of illegal operations. The breweries out in the suburbs didn't. And then you come in with Anheuser-Busch and the rest of them having the deep pockets to buy advertising. Pabst was the first brewery to advertise on the radio. Anheuser-Busch had the first television contracts with sports teams. Surely breweries aren't going to spend that money. They don't have that money. They're struggling along with 100,000 barrels. Meanwhile, Anheuser-Busch is down there in St. Louis making 20 million barrels a year out of just that plant. And so it was just a matter of economics. The breweries just didn't have the money, didn't survive Prohibition, and they all collapsed in on themselves. And once that happened, everybody turned to those beers, the Anheuser-Busch. When you're flooded every day by an Anheuser-Busch, Bud Light, Michelob, Busch, Coors, Stroh's, Schlitz, or Old Style ad, you don't think of drinking anything but those. And those are the beers that your parents drink, and those are the beers your grandparents drink. And then you end up in a period where that's the beer I first drank.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so
that is really well said. Now, an interesting fact is, because we just talked a lot about Schlitz, and George, this came up on an earlier episode of our audio podcast. Schlitz was the first company to roll out beer in a glass bottle. Is that correct? That's what it was?
Correct, yeah.
John, did you come across that before?
No, there is some inaccuracy. Schlitz was not. Schlitz was the first one to use brown bottles.
Brown bottles. Okay, that's the one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
Well, okay. All right. Let's even go backwards even further. Who's packing it in a non-brown bottle before that?
Oh, everybody. Yeah, everybody.
Nationwide?
Oh, yeah.
Were they
Just okay. So is it just clear?
I think the trivia you were talking about, Jason, I think actually was not a bottle, but it was a can. It was the first one to use an aluminum can, is what you had talked about.
That would have been Coors.
Which I think
Okay.
was
Schlitz had the first aluminum.
Coors, yeah.
Schlitz had the first aluminum top that you would use a church key to open.
Oh.
Right.
Oh.
Iron City had the first pull tab.
Yeah.
Okay.
Clear bottles.
Okay.
Clear bottles were cheaper. You didn't have to be concerned about light struck. The beer was coming home and it was in a wooden box. It's not sitting on shelves being exposed to light. It's going right in a wooden box, and it's being brought to your house in a wooden box. So you don't really have to be concerned about light struck. Brown bottles are more expensive than amber bottles are, and so it was not the problem that it later became when, especially when you're not shipping beer. I mean, part of the thing with Schlitz was they were shipping the beer down here from Milwaukee. Then you have to be a little bit more concerned. But when you're sending your beer 25 miles or 50 miles outside of your brewery, it's not a big deal. But when you're all of a sudden sending beer across the country, it becomes a little bit more of a concern.
Oh, sure. So, John, do you see any correlation? Because I know when the craft brewery industry really kind of hit, and especially hit Chicago, the vast majority of breweries that open seem to kind of take that whole neighborhood brewery idea and kind of revitalize it. You didn't see a lot of breweries opening up for distribution. Do you think that's kind of a holdover from that like when the craft beer scene came up, you saw, especially in Chicago, just myriad tap houses and very localized beer. I don't want to call it distribution, but like notoriety and everything in the craft beer scene.
It was getting into the distributors. I mean, Goose Island was the first one that signed on with any distributor. and they didn't do that until '92, about 5 years after they opened. Before they started that, it was the idea that you couldn't get into them. The distributors didn't want anything to do with you. We're not wasting our money on that crap. Nobody's going to buy that. Why am I going to sell your beer? I'm trying to sell Coors. I'm trying to sell, because all the distributors were, latched onto one of the big brewers, and the big brewers were very much, and still are to a certain degree, against the craft brewers, because it's just destroying their business model. It's taking away their market share.
Right.
And which is why you see Coors or Miller Coors buying up Terrapin, or why you see Anheuser-Busch grabbing breweries from one end, microbreweries, craft breweries from one end of the country to the other. It was a distribution. They wanted a contract. They wanted a guarantee. They wanted, all these things. And these brewers didn't have the money or the financial withal to be able to guarantee them or pay those slotting fees on shelves or things of that nature. So it was that. I mean, that forced them to become neighborhood, small, local.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Which suits the business
it was
model
just
as
market
well.
pressure that the distributors didn't want to deal with them, so they just did their own thing. Is that
It wasn't until the early 2000s when the large breweries started going, maybe this really is not just a fad. Maybe this is something that's going to be around for a long time. That they started going, okay, we'll distribute your beer and we'll distribute your beer. It wasn't until that point in time where you saw the big brewers and the distributors take a look and go, hey, maybe there is something more to this than what we thought. Because you got to think, you had
right.
You had like Gluntz, which just distributed craft brewers. They started a distributorship and they go, okay, nobody wants to distribute Anchor Steam in Chicago. We'll take Anchor Steam. And Gluntz signed on with Anchor Steam. Nobody wants to distribute Burt Grant's. Okay, we'll distribute Burt Grant's, and you start Mendocino and some of these others. You saw distributors that were set up specifically only to deal with the craft beers because the large distributors didn't want anything to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
And you still see that today, even with Breakthrough even with Breakthrough Beverage and Wirtz, which is gone now, in Windy City, they still base themselves. Even Heartland, there's still a lot of distributors in the area that just only deal in craft beers because the craft brewers know they're going to be taken care of because these people deal with craft beers. What does Coors know about selling a craft beer? What does Anheuser-Busch know about selling a craft beer? I mean, they own it. They own it because they're trying to maintain market share, and they realize it's a moneymaker for them. But
Right.
What do they really know about how to properly market that? I mean,
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, that makes sense.
Is this Stump John night? Is that what's going on here?
Sorry,
the packaging questions I think kind of were, and I'm really impressed with that you just got to rattle off those the way that you did.
No,
Wow.
and
I'm
John,
just
for
sitting here
me,
listening going, oh my God, really? There's a lot of stuff I didn't know, so sorry.
Along with everybody else who's hearing this, Paulie.
Right?
this is literally me just geeking out a bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, but the good news is you passed on
Yeah.
every one. So
Yeah.
So you get a shot.
So-
Yeah.
Just
All
not
right.
Malort.
Oh, man.
Just not Malort.
We sent a bottle of Malort to a common person who joins our webcast. He's out of Buffalo, New York, and we had a segment where he had his first taste of Malort here on the webcast.
Oh God, that's fucking funny.
It's one of the golden moments in the history of this webcast.
It really is.
Yeah.
Is he no longer
He's
your
not
friend?
a fan.
No, we still are.
Well, I mean, he doesn't join as often as he used to. I don't think there's a correlation there, but hey, I mean, I don't know if I can rule it out either.
He's a teacher and school's back in session. So
Yeah.
yeah.
He's too polite to admit it.
Oh man, sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, John, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's stick with Stump John. Okay, what's
I'm a history buff, and the history of beer and everything is with the rest of the history of the country is so intertwined. It's absolutely ridiculous, and I don't think people realize how intertwined the
It
brewing
is.
industry is with the history of the country in general.
Yeah.
I was telling Jason before we started up that I think it'd be really interesting to do some research and put together an article or a podcast or something on the history of home brewing in the U.S. When it comes to that, because I imagine it was all kind of jerry-rigged, whatever you could come up with initially, but I don't know even how prevalent it was, back before the official founding of the country or anything like that. And I feel like it'd be really interesting to research.
Oh, well, a lot of taverns had breweries in them. They wouldn't have been much more than small, not even gallon, multi-gallon pots on the fire that they served in the tavern.
Right.
Especially when you got out in
Which
the country.
is almost basically homebrew. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I would imagine it probably died down substantially when the industry itself took off in the early 1800s on through the 1800s. But you see a huge spike in that when Prohibition rolls around again, because it was illegal to manufacture on a commercial level. It was not illegal to manufacture in your home. I mean, there were several malt shops in Joliet. When I say malt shops, I'm not talking sitting down having a malt. I'm talking there were at least 3 that I'm aware of that sold cans of malt. And I've got a couple of old malt syrup cans that I purchased from different breweries in the state and from other places. So, people were buying malt syrup. And the funniest thing about it is on the back side, they often said, do not add hops to this or water and age it.
Or
They
yeast,
produce
yeah.
alcohol. And that was the entire purpose of it. They had to put that disclaimer on the back because they wanted you to use it for cooking purposes.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
So Jason, and be ready for this because it sounds like a really early version of the world famous brew and grow in Bolingbrook, Illinois.
You mean that's exactly where my brain went to also.
Oh yeah.
I can't condone this, but if you're trying to make something similar, I've got it.
Right. Yeah, the whole hydroponic session that's just
Right.
for vegetables,
Yes, it was just for vegetables.
Mhm.
It wasn't until about January 1st of 2020. That's when the world went to shit. Illinois rock. World went to shit. Sorry.
Yeah.
So that's what started. That's what started this whole mess.
Yep. I'm blaming
No, really? Okay. All right.
drunk.
Always
Give me a loan.
brew and grow. Okay.
blaming the brew and grow.
Yeah, blame that burger. I will. I quit it.
All right. I'm going to make the first political comment, and I will point out that there's several other states that are jumping on that same bandwagon as of election time.
Yes, there are.
Yes,
there are.
I don't have a count, but there were many that voted on an amendment to legalize. Is that how many it was? 7? Wow.
I think
Okay.
it was
Are we gonna
7
smoke
voted
weed?
to
Hold on,
legalize,
give me a
and
second.
No, I'm not smoking. I'm pouring a shot because we're talking about politics. Because that was the rule.
and Oregon
decriminalized
voted
everything.
decriminalized.
Oh, that was a whole. Yeah, they were one of the first.
I did see a few states allowed weed, so.
Yep. New Jersey was one of them.
And then Nevada, they let magic mushrooms out happen too, so.
Yeah, I don't. That one caught me by surprise. I haven't really followed that, and that's kind of intriguing to me that we're moving further in that direction.
You know what? I can get behind it if that's what you're in.
Yeah,
Fine.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think. I mean, first of all, it's interesting to me that I feel like this movement to legalize certain drugs went from 0 to a whole lot of momentum very quickly. I find that very interesting. Like, I feel like if you said, like, in the early 2000s that marijuana had medicinal qualities, people would be like, you're out of your goddamn mind. Get the fuck out of here. Well, now here we are, and it's now legal. Now it's legal, and we're talking about legalizing microdoses of other things.
Right.
I feel. I mean, it's interesting to me that it gained momentum as quickly as it did.
Well,
Is that a fair statement?
I see where you're.
I think it's very fair. Yeah.
I see where you're.
It's a generation. It's a generational thing.
Yeah.
As you get more and more people into positions of office, be it legislative or otherwise, that are under the age of 40, despite all of the egg in the frying pan commercials, I think that they didn't buy it in that sense that there was anything wrong with it. So now that they're in that position of power, they can start passing those laws or proposing those laws. The percentage of population under 40 that votes is in general greater than that over 60, especially when you get down there. You get those 18, 19, 20-year-olds are like, hell yeah, I'm going to go vote for that. I'm not voting for anything else. I'm going to vote for that.
Yeah, there is a general. Go ahead, George.
I was going to say, I've seen a lot of parallels between, and people have been drawing some parallels between a lot of the decriminalization and legalization that's going on to prohibition. And they're calling them basically, anti-prohibition laws for, these different drugs and everything. And they're drawing parallels between the alcohol prohibition and the prohibition of these drugs, which I think is very interesting when you really think about it, because a lot of the problems that we have with it is because it's not legal, not regulated, and everything like that. So it becomes inherently dangerous.
Yeah.
Well,
I think
most of those drugs were made illegal at the same time Prohibition was. Marijuana, cocaine,
right.
they all went at the same time. But there was no drug lobby to bring them back, like there was an alcohol lobby, because it wasn't an industry per se, like the alcohol industry or the beer industry, which was a nationwide industry and had trade groups. In the years before before they were prohibited and made illegal, there wasn't an industry, so there was nobody to help try to bring that back. It took a long time for the government to figure out, well, geez, it's costing us a lot of money to incarcerate and prosecute all these people. Maybe if we stopped that, made this legal, and figured out a way to tax it, it would help. And it's that same
right. And honestly, from what I've read, the main reason that that marijuana per se is a Schedule I drug is because you're right, there wasn't an industry around it, but there was an industry around tobacco. So the tobacco lobby and the tobacco industry really are the ones that really push to have marijuana be considered a Schedule I drug and keep it illegal, so that it wouldn't cut into the tobacco industry. And I think that that's a lot of the history around that.
That parallels closely with the prohibition, the start of prohibition itself. The beer industry constantly looked at whiskey and said, they're the evil ones. That's much stronger. We're a beverage of temperance. We're a lower alcohol. You can have this with your family. And they pointed their finger at the whiskey people and the wine people. And because the three of them were not on the same page and they were pointing fingers at each other, who was the evil person in the entire group, they ended up losing. Whereas if they'd maybe joined forces and said, okay, you know what? We're all in this together. We have to stop this before it happens, instead of pointing fingers at each other. Maybe we wouldn't have had prohibition of alcohol the way we did. So it does parallel closely with the tobacco industry going, hey, they're the evil ones, not us. And that it's the same thing. You're right. But once they figured out how to tax it and make money, it came back, much like the beer industry. Part of the reason prohibition came to an end is they needed money because we were in the middle of a Great Depression. Well, we got to raise some money. What can we do? Well, everybody is drinking now, so we may as well make it legal and tax it, because nobody's.
Isn't it interesting? Think about this for a second. Isn't it interesting that in this day and age, it has become more socially acceptable to smoke weed than it is to smoke cigarettes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that strange?
It is a little bit strange, but it's arguably safer, and the science backs that up a little bit, but But you're right. I mean, but it is strange. It continues to be strange because technically, at a federal level, it's an illegal substance, and
Right.
But it is still more in a lot of places more socially acceptable to smoke weed than it is to smoke a cigarette.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Now, I have no doubt that when history is written on this, we will look back at these days the way that we look back at Prohibition. I feel very strongly
Oh, no
about
doubt.
that. The fact that we had marijuana illegal for as long as we did will be seen in the same light as Prohibition.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
No doubt. Yeah.
To your point about the safety of it, I don't see where the cannabis industry is adding the chemicals and additives that are carcinogenic the way the cigarette industry does. So it certainly is safer because they don't add all that stuff the way the cigarette people do. So I'm sure, I don't know, there probably have been no long-term studies on somebody who smoked weed their whole life versus somebody who smoked tobacco. But I would imagine that one is certainly substantially less carcinogenic than the other.
Well, it's a different experience and it's a different habit. Like it would be tough to kind of align those in exact parallel. But yes, there's something to be said about that. There is chemical additions that people that have been injected into cigarettes for a very long time that aren't a thing with weed. But there's something to be said too. There's reverse effects that weed has that regular cigarettes don't have. So there's things on both sides with that. Now the other part, and now we're doing a deep dive on cigarettes and weed, and I think this is interesting. I can't remember if I've brought this up before, but I always find it interesting. We just illegalized, smoking in most public indoor places less than 15 years ago. I mean, 2008 is when it took effect in Illinois. Doesn't it seem insanely primitive that you would walk into a restaurant with an ashtray and smoke a cigarette right now?
As a lifelong non-smoker, absolutely, I would agree with you on that. But I at the same time, I somewhat sympathize with those that would like to have a smoking section. However, at the same time, I also understand that a smoking section as a concept is a ridiculous concept.
It's absurd. Yes, it is.
Have it completely closed off.
Yeah, but that's my point. That's how interesting is that our perception has changed so quickly, just in line with not only just a public perception changing, but also the laws changing. And you're right. There were people that were arguing in the direction of, well, there should be some kind of choice. And by the way, there's a valid argument to that, to some degree, that there should be options out there for people that are exploring that. Yes. Did that end up gaining enough momentum that it changed the public sentiment towards that? No. And now, just a few short years later, we're just like, my God, we really had that for all of time up until this changed?
Yeah, we were
it's crazy. Yeah, savages, exactly.
Aren't there
the progression of smoking? So the progression of smoking and drinking in society has, I don't want to say it's heading towards.
Oh man. Okay.
No.
He's gonna no. This is the result of just poor internet connection where he's at. This does happen. George, pick right up where you were at. This is good.
Okay, so the progression of drinking and smoking in our society has been moving towards one of not broadcasting it.
Mm-hmm.
So back in the 40s and 50s, and you can see this if you look at period pieces like Mad Men and stuff, just the immense advertising that you would have for cigarettes and things like that you cannot do today. If you look at the commercials of the 40s and 50s and 60s versus the commercials of today, they're vastly different because of regulation that came in that said you cannot advertise in this way. and I could see them moving that towards realms of alcohol as well in the future, and limiting that because of the idea is the influence it would have on children that see it. And so it's not so much a prohibition kind of mentality, but just not a broadcast of of what is considered an unhealthy habit for minors that can't do it responsibly. I could definitely see that happening with alcohol and things like that in the future as well.
Wasn't hard liquor advertisable up until about 1980? There he goes again. I want to say. I want to say. I think hard alcohol was.
You might be right. And honestly, I think it was restricted for even longer than that.
Yeah, wasn't alcohol advertising on television up until the mid 70s or so?
I think there was some restrictions on that, and they got loosened. I think. It's that whole what they used to call it. They call it the golden hour, where you don't even see advertisements for Behringer wine on TV anymore. And I remember seeing advertisements for Gallo and Behringer well into the '80s, and you don't see advertisements for wine. Yeah.
You don't see. I mean, it's down to just beer now. I mean, that's all. I mean, you don't see any other alcohol advertisements at all. It's down to just beer. But you used to see those up until the mid '80s. I remember seeing advertisements for Gallo and some other wines and even some hard alcohol up into the late 70s. And it just, did they realize it wasn't doing them any good, or were they trying to cut themselves off at the pass before they got in trouble with the federal government? And
I think there was some regulation around that, and I think that has changed in the 2000s. Like just for one example, like if you watch a football game on the weekends, you'll see advertisement for Southern Comfort, which is obviously a hard alcohol spirit. They have that advertising campaign, the Water Break, which I think is a good one, and they're speaking to social responsibility around that, but they still can promote a spirits product. And I've seen commercials out there for like. Jim Beam and Smirnoff and some of the other brand names, and but John, to your point, I don't remember seeing those same products advertised in those mediums, like say in the 90s, or at least in the things that I was watching. I haven't done my homework on this, but I do think that there was some kind of regulation that got changed and allowed them to. Hello.
No.
Did I lose everyone? Shit.
No.
No, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No, Jason. I think you're probably. And that has been one interesting shift in advertising and alcohol advertising is much more along the lines of instead, back in the 80s and 90s, a lot of it was how much can you party using.
See, yes. Yeah, this is it's frustrating because George gets these really good points, and it's always the later half of each show when his internet just goes to shit. Oh, George.
Yeah, so 80s, 90s advertising for the alcohol industry was how much can you party using our product, and now it's how can you incorporate it responsibly into your life. Mm-hmm. Which I think is an interesting shift in advertising tactics. They're almost trying to make it I don't want to say a condiment, but something that is just part of your, you know what I'm saying? Like that's an interesting comparison.
Like I see what you're saying.
A luxury item.
Yeah.
Which I think is an interesting idea.
It's also more directed now, I think. You used to just see those advertisements at 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock during regular broadcasts. Now those advertisements are only on sports. Mm-hmm. Children won't be watching. Or, I'm saying they've shifted the way they do that advertising. Because I remember seeing, how many Clydesdale commercials do you remember seeing in the 70s or 80s or 90s? At 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or during, now the only time you see those types of advertisements are during sporting events. So it looks like, so not only have they shifted the message in the advertising, but there's also been a shift in the time period and in the direction of that advertising, that it's more directed towards the sports fan or something along those lines as opposed to just a general population thing.
Right. Right.
And George
Well,
didn't
and
hear any of this.
there's a whole nother deep dive that we could do as far as to the audiences, on some of those broadcasts, and the fact that, just the internet and social media have just added a different layer to just the, people's day-to-day media consumption. So the market mix is different with that too, and the networks, and also the advertising companies like spirits companies, of course, have to understand that, and they have to be more selective of where they're spending their advertising and marketing dollars. So I think that probably makes a significant difference in just how that's evolved over time.
I hear behind that.
Yeah.
Go team. Peanut
Yeah.
Gallery's joining in, so.
What's going on there, Peanut Gallery?
Enjoying.
Quiet tonight, Paulie.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm listening. I'm learning shit here, so. I mean,
There's
I
gonna
got
be
my
a quiz at the
stuff
end.
going on. I got a lot of stuff going on in my head, so I'm learning.
Mr. Bitterman is always a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah. The
Yes.
wealth of knowledge coming in. Exactly.
Huge wealth of knowledge. This is awesome.
Let's go back to beer.
I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
Okay, what could I possibly stump John with? I that keeps just running around in my head, and my brain goes back to packaging, and I've exhausted those. So okay, what else do I have?
All right,
Glasses on the
Bitterman.
shelf behind him.
No. Bitterman. What was the first brewery in Illinois?
We did that already.
We talked about that already.
We did that one, Polly.
It was by
Alright,
St.
sorry.
Louis.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. My
It was in the
bad.
French Fort. The French Fort
All right.
Cascadia.
All right, here I know he knows this one, but I just don't know the answer. What's the newest brewery that opened in the past couple of weeks in Illinois?
Well, I'm open in the past weeks. I have to think really hard. Because I haven't been going out with much frequency lately.
I mean, you want me to stump you? Okay, I failed on the first question, but here's a new question: what just opened in the past? I don't know. Give me a month.
I'm
The
trying to think
newest
of
brewery
anybody.
in Illinois.
I'm trying to think of who's open in the past
He's a
month.
historian, not a current events guy.
Has been to every brewery in the state of Illinois. I can attest that because I follow him on social media, so I know he's
All
been
right,
to every
John.
brewery in
I'm
the
trying to
state.
think who's open recently. I mean, I know who's coming up. I'm always excited for the next new one.
All right, who's the next new one? How about that?
The next new one's gonna be Milk Money.
Milk Money.
Oh yeah, with is it
Pizer.
Jeff or Dave?
Eric
Who?
Pizer. Eric
Eric
Pizer
Pizer, yes,
over there at Milk Money. Yeah, that's the
All
next
right.
one.
yeah. I mean, talk about doing like I've been following him on social media, and I remember him like they were opening up. COVID hits. They did what they did. They were selling sausages and stuff out of their brewery.
Yeah. They were just selling food out of there for a long time, but they should be. Last time I talked to Eric, he was saying the third week of November, so we could be a couple weeks away from seeing them open up.
All right. Well, that's good to know.
All right.
Keep me informed on that. I would love to go. I would love to go up there and see him that day.
South of Green.
I will indeed.
John, I got one for you.
Who, where, what?
Oldest still operating brewery in the U.S. and what did they make during Prohibition?
Oh, the oldest operating brewery in the United States is Yingling, Pottsville, Pennsylvania.
Yes, sir.
Ice cream. The ice cream plant is still standing too.
Yes, it is. You're absolutely correct.
What was one I was going to bring up? What was it?
What did John win tonight?
I've actually had Yingling ice cream. It's pretty good.
Is it? Yeah, never had it.
Yeah.
Never. I should have gone looking for some when I was over that way a couple of years ago. I should have gone looking for some, but I never did go visit the Pottsville plant. Just because I'm like, I got to go see the oldest brewery. Who's the second oldest? Yeah. I'm going to make you Google that one. I'm not telling you that answer. Second and third. I'll give you second and third.
Second and third. Okay.
Yes, go. Look, he left. He purposely shut down so he could go Google the second and third oldest brewery is.
All right. Well, it's. I mean, I'm thinking. Okay, it's got to be in the 13 colonies. Okay, so we're talking East Coast / Northeast. Oh boy.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up. That'll be a to be continued. Oh, George may be Googling this right now himself.
All right. Well, my connection's crappy. I don't even know if you can hear me.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna have to bow out. I'm not sure about you guys because I can't maintain a connection.
Okay. All right. Well, let's round up, and I think we've had a great episode here, and we've teased a follow up where we're going to talk about the Yingling blue ribbon in great detail. So, and George just dropped off once again. All right. Yeah, John.
Yes.
Before we close out, I do want to echo. This came up before, and I feel like tonight's episode has further echoed this. My friend, you need to launch a website, write a book, something like this. Your knowledge is phenomenal and really needs its own medium. It really, really does. And honestly, like, you know, we've covered. We've been on here for 2 hours, and we haven't even scratched the surface of just how much is in that brain of yours. So
I love to just show up at things like this periodically and just spew stuff, and then move on to the next time I do it. It makes everybody want to come back for more.
yeah, that's 100% true, and that's why I feel like having a medium is just the next evolution of what you've got going. So if you needed to hear that from somebody else, well, you're hearing that here from me and hearing the crew for A Nice Place to Brew. So thank you so much for joining. We look forward to the podcast, and you're welcome on this webcast anytime. We'll absolutely be in touch and look forward to more.
I had a great time. I always do. It's always fun to listen to you, watch you, and always a joy to visit and talk and be invited on. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Likewise. All right, let's round it up. Today is November 5th. We do the webcast every Thursday here on the YouTube and Facebook channel, 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Check out our audio podcast. It's available on Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, and all the places you get your podcast from under the same name, A Nice Place to Brew. We'll have an upcoming episode with John Bitterman and Paulie talking about the Blue Ribbon Award given to Pabst. We're going to do some research, and it's going to be a full episode devoted to that. We have a website, www.aniceplacetobrew.com, and we have social media pages under the name A Nice Place to Brew and Nice Place to Brew. Everybody, stay safe out there. We're almost through this election counting thing, and we're into November. You know, just one day at a time. Take care of take care of yourselves and each other. Have a great weekend. And I don't have any beer left, so it's going to have to be a spirits cheer. Oh boy! Oh jeez! Oh boy! Yeah, we're capping the show with more shots. All right.
I can't believe
one. Yeah, one. George. It takes a lot of good beer to make great beer. Cheers. We'll see you next week.
Cheers.